hearings to order. It is now 2 o'clock. Please introduce yourselves.
Deputy Director of Finance assigned to the Planning Department.
Dave McCoy, Chautauqua County Watershed Coordinator.
Mark Geis, Deputy County Executive for Economic Development.
Nate Aldrich, Economic Development Coordinator.
Rebecca Worster, Planning Coordinator.
Thank you for being here. You want to go ahead and get started?
Yes, so I'm going to do sort of the play-by-play at a high level, and I've got my colleagues here to help answer questions that I might not be able to answer. Bottom line is, in our budget, we have not increased any, FTEs, same as last year. And in general, there's been a 3% reduction in local share versus last year's budget.
Okay. Can I ask just one question?
Yeah.
On the sheet we have, it shows a 1 FTE addition.
Yep, that is incorrect, so.
Yep. As we discussed during the county executive's presentation earlier this week, there's an error in our report, and it's actually Mark's position is pulling, so it shows a decrease in the county executive office and increase here. It's actually budgeted correctly in 2025 in planning. That's just an error on our summary. It's not an FTE increase to the department.
Great, thanks.
That happened last year.
Sorry about that.
Yep. So high level again, what you're looking at, I've got the department budget summary in front of me, and it shows sort of the 5, cost centers, if you will. 6420 is general economic development division. 6420 tour is the 3% occupancy tax, and they're kind of out of order here. 8020 is general planning. 6420 COMC is the contracts, the community contracts that we manage. And then 8020 watershed is the 2% occupancy tax. Okay?
Great.
So if you go to the next page, we have 6420 general fund, promotion of industry. Other than a slight increase in personnel, services, and benefits, which is across the board, this shows $1 million budget increase in revenue and expenses, and that's the $1 million infrastructure grant that we got for housing infrastructure that was approved at the latest legislature meeting. It's probably more appropriate for that maybe to be over an 80-20, but it is here, it doesn't really matter.
And that is something, though, if we would like to, if possible, change that location of this grant from A60 to 80-20 through this process this afternoon. That would be managed by Rebecca and would just be better served to be in that Department of Planning.
It's money in, money out.
Yep.
Okay,
Oh, yeah,
so,
that's right.
can we do anything?
Well,
Just make a
an expression
Okay.
of intent from the
Yep.
committee members,
Yeah,
if they're agreed.
makes more sense.
If the committee agrees with the intent, then you should share that with the budget director, and we could take that up at audit and control tomorrow.
Fred, you're with us. Right, exactly, so the three of us, we have to, as a
Divided
committee,
loyalty.
as a committee, we have to decide if that's something that we should recommend to the finance department.
I'm not part of it. You've got 60 seconds. You're back with us.
I like
Okay,
that.
well, we don't have quorum. If you want to make an accounting change, I'm fine with it, but let's just follow the procedure.
Are you okay with it, Fred?
It's just a recommendation.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the recommendation?
Sure.
I suggest that the 3 committee members here express their consensus that that accounting change should be done.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's really nothing else on this budget summary to speak of?
Mark, you and I talked before the meeting. There are just a couple of things that I've discussed with you today that have been a concern of mine over the last year, maybe. First is on not having any job training line for your department money. I've learned from JCC over this past year that unfortunately they don't have a dedicated income from the state or from the county budget for basic, what I would call infrastructure of a job training program. So regardless of what employer comes to them, whether it's CERTA saying we've got 15 people out of our 100 that they desperately need training on this, that, or the other thing, can JCC provide that? JCC at this stage has no built-in capacity to do that, or SKF Bearings comes to them and says, we're introducing a new technique, and would you be able to help us train X number of people on it? They have no dedicated funding. I did research back from 98 to 2005 when I was county attorney. A number of those years, the county legislature put money in the budget for job training. And so, Mark, you indicated you wouldn't be against putting $100,000 into your budget that would allow you to contract with whomever, probably our own community college, for job training. I would like to see that. Then, Mark, you have no capital account currently. I gave the example of if you had a 50-acre worn-out dairy farm next to Cummins or next to the brewery or next to Chadwick Bay, or my colleague points out there may well be some land becoming available on the market adjacent to the Ripley Park. Right now, you don't have a capital account that says if land becomes available on the open market, you don't have any capital account that allows you to enter into a contract to purchase a 50-acre dairy farm. I was hoping for $5,000 an acre. You were suggesting maybe that's low, but for argument's sake, for $10,000 an acre, that's 500 grand. If you had a capital line item of 500 grand for acquisition of business industrial park property, you could make an offer to that landowner subject to the county legislature approving and the county acquiring. But you wouldn't have to convince the legislature to find the money to do that. The legislature would already have funded that capital account, just as we do with bridges. We don't necessarily know for sure what bridges have to be done in 2026, but we approve a capital line item for bridges, and then that's used as necessary as the bids come in. You find out how much federal and state aid there is. We don't put zero in for bridges and say, well, you know, you got a bridge you got to do, come to us, we'll take it out of fund balance. That's not how we do capital items like that. I'm just suggesting, and Mark said he's not against it, that we give your department some amount of money in a capital account. If it's not spent in 26, it would be the intent to roll it over to 27, hopefully put a little more into it as the years go by, and you'd be in a position to make a quick offer on land that becomes publicly available, offered for sale. Did I indicate correctly you wouldn't be against those two things?
Correct. I did point out to you that we do have, through the capital projects process, we were allocated $350,000 in 2026. 2025, I'm sorry. And so, and I believe last year, it's sort of hit and miss, but in most years, we do get an allocation through the capital projects. That being said, it's never enough. If we really want to go, you know, and do what we need to do, we could always use more.
A question on that. I don't believe we legislators have received the PowerPoint presentation of the tentative budget, and the PowerPoint presentation's not like an addendum to this book, is it?
No, it's not in here.
The PowerPoint presentation had a lot of historical data It referenced how much the sales tax was when the county executive was first elected versus now or whatever. The PowerPoint presentation just alleged the 350 grand, but it said greenfields, it said one or two other things. It's not allocated within that PowerPoint presentation. I would like to see, Mark, your shop have whatever the Republican majority will allow you to have, whether it's 500 grand or 400 grand or 250 grand or whatever. We should create a capital account for land acquisition for industrial parks, business parks, so you can jump on land that becomes publicly available. I keep saying that because if there's land that you desperately want, but it's not being publicly offered for sale, you have to go through the eminent domain proceeding, and you have to go out and hire a couple of appraisals and offer the landowner the hire of the, you have to work with the lawyers very closely. But even there, thinking out loud, sadly, if you had 500 grand, you could use that to hire those appraisers for the purpose of land acquisition, and they come in and say, the hire of the two appraisals is 400 grand. Again, you've got the money to make that offer to the landowner under the eminent domain procedure law, which, as I understand it, the IDA, as well as the county itself, obviously, have the, I think the IDA has power of eminent domain. The county government obviously does. We prefer not to use it, but just because you offer that landowner the hire of the two appraisals doesn't mean that if he tells you to go pound salt, it doesn't mean we're going to force him to sell, right? So there we have it.
So I think since we don't have a quorum, the suggestion would be for us to give a note to the Finance Department that we are interested in 100,000. Fred, you're on our committee, so we need to, even though I can't seek a vote, I'll seek agreement for $100,000 workforce development training line, as well as a capital projects line to purchase adjoining properties.
Well, that would be the most obvious thing to do, but I would rather call the capital account industrial park, business park land acquisition.
Business park land acquisition.
It may be one property owner away from Cummins or away from the brewery, but it still would be, I wouldn't want to limit it to literally adjacent. Would you, Mark?
I agree.
And in a dollar amount of?
Well, given the per acre cost, Ripley was 30 and 35,000 an acre. Fred and I don't like that figure, but my 5,000 figure I threw out at Mark sounds like maybe I'm 20 years out of date. So at 10 an acre, a 50-acre dairy farm that could be an industrial park, Mark is suggesting, 10 grand, 500,000 just to pick up 50 acres.
So a capital project line indicating for
500 grand.
$500,000.
Legislator Larson, if I could point out, as Mark indicated, there's $350,000 in the 2026 capital budget for greenfield development. There is a outstanding project from years gone by for greenfield development that has been incremented, as Mark indicated, over the years, currently having a balance of $370,000. So there's $720,000 available to planning to acquire property for greenfield development.
Good.
Well, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, reason I want to see that PowerPoint presentation, the PowerPoint presentation lumped that 350 grand into about 3 different categories. I remember the term greenfields, but that wasn't the only item listed in the PowerPoint presentation.
I think he said complete streets was another thing that was mentioned.
There you go.
Yep.
That's a different project, that's a different capital project.
Not according to the PowerPoint, that was in there.
Sorry, it's a different capital project, it's in the book.
It is.
I didn't put the PowerPoint presentation together.
Sure. But, Mark, can you confirm that greenfield development capital project that has a balance of 370 in it and has a proposed allocation in next year's budget of 350, would meet the objectives that legislator Larson is
Yes,
suggesting.
it would.
Kitty also had a comment.
Kitty wanted to.
I just wanted, as a point of order, the recommendation, I believe, should be going to the Audit and Control Committee.
Yes.
Not the Finance.
What we're asking is for you to make note of this.
Yes, we are.
For the Audit and Control Committee meeting tomorrow.
I see, I misunderstood. I thought you were.
Well,
Because we don't have a.
thank you, Kitty.
Can I comment also is, in that, it would also, like Mark indicated, would constitute a change in how the legislature and how the county does business in sense of its capital projects. If you're proposing this capital improvement or capital account, in sense, we do have the capital projects procedure that in which it goes to the capital projects committee that reviews and board that reviews the projects that are such presented. And so, this would circumvent that process. So I think it would institute some sort of a charter change if that was what I am understanding as well. Am I mistaken in that understanding?
Yes, you're totally mistaken, unfortunately. This legislature, all the time, the Capital Projects Committee is an advisory body. That's all. And I respect process, but I value results more. And when the Capital Projects recommends to us that we build a new whatever, and it turns out that it costs $1 million more than anticipated, this legislature then votes to take $1 million out of fund balance or somewhere else. Capital Projects Committee has no role in what we decide to spend, how much it costs. That's on us. They are an advisory body, appreciate the work they do, but I'm interested in results more than process. And this greenfields notion, a lot of the land that winds up being industrial park development is brownfield. It has had something on it before.
There's a brownfield development capital account for that as well.
Pardon?
There's a capital project for brownfield development as well.
How much is in that?
I'd have to go back and look. Just give me a moment. I've got to page through this massive binder.
If I may, my eponymous friend, you could knock me over with a feather when you say that process is less important than results. We had some antecedents by the name of Lenin and Stalin who said the end justifies the means. And certainly coming from your profession, that does not apply.
Well, actually, Fred, in the law, there's always been a provision for emergencies.
Did you find it?
Yes, the current balance in the brownfields remediation program is $23,950.
Well, that doesn't do anything for Mark.
Well, it does, because if it's remediated for 23.9, then it becomes a greenfield, and then he can use the $700,000 that he has, right?
You'd love to see a gas station owner that was able to remediate their land for 23.9. They'd be throwing a party for the whole community. Well, once
Okay.
again, all I can do is offer 40-plus years of experience in county government, building industrial parks, building spec buildings that led to businesses coming here, including the brewery. If you don't want to do anything, I suggest you have the power to ignore me up one side and down the other. We all know that. So I've said what I've said. Mark was supportive of getting $100,000 for job training and upwards of $500,000 as a capital item for land acquisition, whether it's brownfield, greenfield, purple field, and I've said all I guess I need to say.
Okay, thanks. So we will leave those two recommendations for you to discuss in audit and control. And then I think that's the process, and we'll go from there. Okay, thank you. Mark, want to go ahead?
Yeah, so next page is 6420 COMC, that's the community contracts. You know, we provide funding to Cornell Cooperative Extension, Soil and Water Conservation District, libraries, the fairgrounds, SBDC, the IDA, and the chamber. And what we're proposing is to up that 3%. And we think in the long run that it will actually save money compared to how it's been traditionally, which was certain agencies would come and ask for, some big increase, and, I don't think it was fair that way, and also, a lot of times those increases were pretty significant, so the idea is that if we get a 3% increase annually, we can keep control of it.
Any questions, Fred or Fred, on the contracts? Okay.
The next page is the general planning fund. No changes, other than, of course, to personnel services, union contracts, benefits, et cetera. And a slight increase in mileage and training, very slight.
Slight change in lodging as well? Okay. Any questions on planning?
Yes, I did have a question. The New York State aid has decreased significantly from the 2025 amended budget. The notes indicate snowmobile grant program revenue.
That note applies to 2026. The 2025 budget had a separate project of New York State added into it. Rebecca actually.
Yeah, it includes the LWRP as well. That might have to be amended next year to include that LWRP, but I don't know the exact amount of how much we'll have spent down for 2026.
So we got a grant from the state for LWRP.
$194,000.
$194,000.
Okay, and you recognize that in the amended 2025 budget. So if those funds aren't spent, they'll be available in 2026. But we just don't know how much yet.
Right.
Right. So that 267 is the snowmobiles currently
So
for
you
2026.
You would bring a resolution in the near future
Yes.
to amend the 2026
budget to include.
that revenue.
Correct.
Would you have any heartburn in us including that in the adopted 2026 budget? Oh, boy.
We don't have the exact
We just
amount.
don't have the exact amount yet, and it's just hard for me to say exactly how much that's going to be. I could find out an estimate, but
Even if you were conservative on that approach, right?
yeah. Yeah, I could look into
Conservative
that.
estimate,
Yep.
so that would just change the amount of your amendment that you would bring to us in a resolution. If it's 100,000,
Correct. Yep.
and we estimated it at 80, okay.
It's historically just been a timing issue and hard to pin down exactly what that amount will be at budget preparation time, but
Yeah.
Does
But I
that,
could get an estimate.
does that grant have any corresponding expenses attached to it?
Yes, consultant costs, that within the next couple of months, we'll most likely see invoices coming in, so.
But it's part of the grant.
Yes.
But if we amended and added revenue, we would need to add expense for that use of that funds next year, I think is the question.
Right.
It wouldn't be just to add the revenue, we'd have to add a corresponding expense
That's
as well.
correct, yeah.
Thank you, Sam. So there really would be no advantage to us for the 2026 budget to include expense and revenue because it would be a neutral wash.
Right.
Well, there would be an advantage. We'd be just a little closer to reality.
Closer to, yes, closer to expectation, yes.
Yeah. What type
The
of,
advantage, I'm thinking of the taxpayers.
You know,
what type of expenses? One-time expenses or continual expected expenses each individual year?
Well, for the LWRP, the expenses are just for the consultants, for the planning efforts for the 10, or 8 individual LWRP plans that we're doing for the 10 waterfront communities.
And we hope that process is wrapped up within the next 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
Whereas the snowmobile grant is an annual.
Correct.
All set here?
All set.
Okay.
Next page is the 6420 tour, which is the 3% occupancy tax. This is what I can tell you, that we're within budget, and we've based our budget on prior year actual. As you know, 50% of the 3% goes to the Visitors Bureau. We have a competitive grant program. We have annual allocations, et cetera. Now, I'm going to need Sam to explain, or someone, to explain this use of reserves. I think he explained it to me, and I was like, okay, well, you can just talk about it.
Yeah, that is the budgeted actual use of reserves. It was included on Kitty's presentation the other day of the 3% for the projects. Essentially, we are funding $135,000, or proposing to fund $135,000 using reserves. That would be on the 3% side. The 2% side, actually, as we get to that, is an actual replenishment of the reserve is what we've budgeted for. So for this kind of doesn't tie out exactly to the reserve, because we also have, or the exhibit, because it has the county historian's money in there, and the use of reserves and what goes to the county parks is off by $15,000, so it looks like it's a difference of $30,000. That's the difference of those two. But that is just as discussed, I believe it was Tuesday, that is in the local share kind of summary of the use of reserves here, and then the replenishment of the 2%.
Madam Chairman, you might also want to refer to the exhibit in the very front of your book under the operating budget tab. If you go a few pages in, or almost to the end of that section under operating, it gives you the exhibit for all the uses of the occupancy tax fund.
Where's that?
Under the operating budget tab in the very front of your book, it's part of the actual tentative budget book.
How many pages in?
From the beginning of your book, under the operating budget tab, I would just go to the end and then go back 2 pages.
Thank you.
All right, Exhibit B3.
Correct. And then that outlines all of the uses of the 3%, that for administration, 3% and 2%.
So there's 2 things here. That one is the use of reserves for the CCDB for marketing and publicity contract, and maybe Nate could talk a little more about that, but also $100,000 for the Chautauqua County Fairgrounds, which we've been working with them on putting together, they put together a really nice plan. They've talked to us several times about things that need to be done there to spruce it up. It's the sort of the focal point, if you will, the main gateway to our county. So that's 2 of the things that we want to do with that.
Madam Chair, my memory could well be wrong, but when we started the occupancy tax, obviously, well, not obviously, but we did. We were able, with the first year of the occupancy tax, estimated at $500,000, and we got the Visitors Bureau off of the general fund and gave them more money out of the $500,000 estimated first-year occupancy tax than they had been getting out of the county's own fund. My memory was somewhere along the line, we said that, and it looks like we do pay DPF. We cover some expensive parks and trails for our visitors. But I also thought, and it could be bad memory, our sheriff boat patrol, we don't have to do that under New York law. The state police anecdotally used to provide some coverage of even Chautauqua Lake with their boats. And where I'm getting at, I don't quickly see that the sheriff gets anything out of the occupancy tax toward the boat patrol, which is, to me, obviously tourist-related, that we're doing something we don't have to do, and that all of the folks from Cleveland and Pittsburgh that are out there boating, it's in their interest that the sheriff have a boat patrol. And maybe Sheriff Quattrone would be happy to have 15 or 20 or 25,000 or something contributed toward his boat patrol expense out of our tourism. And/or you could do it under tourism, you could do it under the water category, it seems to me. So just a suggestion that probably won't go anywhere in this environment, but for what it's worth, as the county attorney that created the occupancy, put together the first-year occupancy tax, if we could divert a small amount of money to the sheriff's boat patrol, that would be local dollars saved. Thank you.
Any more on the occupancy tax, Mark?
Yeah. So that was the 3%, and then the next page in your book is the 2% occupancy tax.
Mark, before you leave
Yeah.
3%, I'm still confused looking at Exhibit B3, looking at your summary, because it looks like Exhibit B3 with the $100,000 of reserves, that the total amount allocated is $1428,698. And I'm not seeing that in your tentative budget.
Well, part of that 150 is offsetting essentially the Parks Department, so that's not going to be in their budget, that's in the Parks Department. The historians' expense is not in their budget, it's in PJ's budget as well, so it's in the county executive. So it's not actually tying out exactly to what you're going to see in their budget to the schedule.
15,000 for the historians.
Yep.
And how much for the parks?
150,000.
150.
And then, Pierre, I believe, and Sam can explain this better than I can, the balance is the use of reserves.
Yeah, the difference, actually, we're looking at the difference on the column, there's another 15,000. Use of reserves minus what we have the parks made it look, Nate's initial question when he asked, I was scrambling for 15,000, and that answer, it's the difference between what parks gets and the use of reserves, kind of, so it's not going to tie out apples to apples,
Okay.
their budget to the actual exhibit, just with it being in a couple different areas.
Sorry, I was missing the 150. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question in regards to this account as well. Let's just say the Parks Department had an opportunity or wanted to build a program. Is there the potential to take that to $200,000 a year? You know, what's the account status and the balance, or what puts that into justification, if that's possible?
So we sit down with the county executive and chairman of the legislature and our team, as well as Andrew Nixon and June, and we, take the occupancy taxes based on the prior year actual, so by then we already have that figure and start working on it. There's a lot of different priorities, we would love to increase that 150 over time. We've had discussions with Tim Card and Jamie Reynolds. We also have allocated resources from the reserve to support projects like the Morton Cobb waterway system, et cetera. So there have been some additional contributions to parks, and as revenues grow, and happy to report, working with the finance department, our first quarter revenue compared to last year is up 8%. So as we continue to build and get more revenue, we'll hopefully be able to increase some of those line items.
Yeah, it's great. I was curious, a question I had the other day during the parks, when we were discussing the Parks Department, I asked how long that 150 has been in place for. Our book only shows back to 2024. So, has it been that since, how long has it been 150? Does anyone remember, or have you ever noticed a change,
I believe it's been consistently 150 for the 6 or so years I've been involved, but also want to make note, we did allocate, or we created a line item for greenway development, 35,000. And that consultant we work with on these trail maintenance and development programs also supports Jamie and team as well.
Oh, yeah, no, I get it, and, you know, and that's, it just, in sense too, it leaves little room for expansion of the Parks Department individually, in sense too, that, you know, they've experienced wage increases in the last 6 years, you know, and probably in the tune of, you know, a certain percentage that, you know, the expenses are that, you know, the projects that you have supported is great, but a lot of it goes into the creation or, but it doesn't support the maintenance either, okay? You know, so now you're creating these trails, and you're creating more, but now they have more to maintain, and they can't keep up. So you really need to keep, you know, invest into the bottom line too, so that they can maintain what we keep creating, okay? You see my line of thinking there. Because, you know, we just did some, like, waterway reopenings, right? Went through and cut out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, now we gotta stay on top of it, and they can't do it for 150,000. But could they do it for 200,000? Maybe, you know, and that's why I'm trying to advocate for it a little bit, because we keep creating great, but you're gonna keep creating because you can't keep up with what you got. We need a fixing line too, you know.
That's definitely a priority in future years as revenue increases, absolutely.
Yep, and you know, for the most part, what the activities we've been involved in is improving the existing trails, less so than creating more new trails, although we're hoping to do that.
Understood.
And by fixing the ones we have, they're making them more maintenance-free, if you will.
Sustainable, yeah.
But I agree with you, I'm all about trails, and I agree with you 100% that if we can look to increase that in the, you know, next year.
It could potentially hire that person that could,
Yep.
you know, we're spending the money just in a different way. You know, we could spend that money and I think that the Parks Department could utilize it and potentially, you know, put the position into place a little more permanently and take the maintenance or the you know, cleaning up of the trails and actually it'd be consistent. You wouldn't need those projects anymore.
Especially those waterway trails.
Sure.
They're problematic.
Yep, agreed. You know, and that's, they're constant maintenance, you know.
We agree with you. We have just want to say we have a great working relationship with DPF Parks, and they're doing good things, and we want to support them.
And I hear what Dan's saying, and in a way, it's a good problem to create more, but I will say, and I've said it earlier, we are seeing the results of improved trails and improved waterways by the usage. And that's one of the reasons, maybe the biggest reason why we're doing it, right? So, yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yep. Could it work better? Everything can always work better, but we do appreciate, speaking from the Parks Commission, it's working, so, good. But I do agree with you.
A little historical context of all this. You have totally different functions being funded by the occupancy tax. For example, you have Fenton Historical Center, Historical Society of Dunkirk, United Arts Appeal, and altogether, you're only projecting a $61,000 increase in occupancy tax revenue next year. Those outside agencies are entirely different than basic county functions. The $150,000 to Parks and Trails, the fact that it's been the same for 6 years or 10 years really doesn't matter. Prior to the invention of the occupancy tax in 1998, 9, somewhere in there, we had a Parks Department. We paid for the whole thing out of county property tax dollars. Now, we don't pay for the whole thing out of county property tax dollars. Whatever the cost of the Parks Department, it gets a $150,000 contribution from the occupancy tax. That 150 is off the backs of the county property tax owners. It's probably not fair to say to visitors to Chautauqua County, we look to you to fund our entire parks operation. Because there are some of us, like yours truly, that loves to go to Lunsman Park and take the walk down the hill toward Lake Erie and slowly work your way back up to the top. I'm not a tourist, I'm a resident. We have a combination of our own people enjoying our parks, our trails, and it's an attraction for people from Ohio, Pittsburgh, and wherever. So the fact the 150 has been frozen is not ignoring the fact that wages and benefits go up. It's just saying that if you allocate $1.2 million, almost $1.3 million, how much of it are you going to keep in-house within county government to offset expenses we may well have paid for with our own sales tax and property tax if there were no occupancy tax? So we don't want to kill the golden goose. We want to spread that occupancy tax around. Many of you would probably agree it's not fair to take 12 grand away from the Fenton to increase county parks by 12 grand because wages and benefits went up. So anyway, in the big picture, you've got how much subsidy of basic county operations are you going to have out of occupancy tax, and how much are you going to give to all these outside organizations? Lastly, on parks and trails, does our sheriff's department still have a snowmobile patrol?
Yes.
And is any of the snowmobile patrol costs coming out of occupancy tax?
No.
And so, I'm not arguing against myself. Whatever the cost of our snowmobile trail, cost of the sheriff's department out of county tax dollars, I don't know if they get any grants from the state or anything.
They do.
They do get some?
They do.
Good. But just like parks at 150 grand for X number of years fixed, even 10 grand out of this fund fixed for years to the sheriff, I could justify that we know with all the Ohio license plates. Ohio apparently, within driving distance of us, is a very flat place and doesn't get the snow that we expect to get. It would be fair to our visitors from Ohio and elsewhere that a tiny bit of the occupancy tax and all the sales tax we get from their food and beverage accounts, I understand some of the snowmobile people drink here or there, some of the sales tax money, occupancy tax money, it wouldn't be abusing them to take 10 or 15 or 20 grand fixed for a number of years toward whatever our net cost is of the sheriff's snowmobile patrol. They benefit in some high proportion from that snowmobile patrol. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, would you like to proceed?
Yes. So anything else on 3% for the time being? Okay, so now the final department, 80/20 watershed. And again, we're within the budget based on prior year actual. We have annual allocations, we've got the competitive grant program, we're trying to build the reserves back up. As Nate said, we have a good trend in the occupancy tax overall that, it's looking like right now it's trending towards around an 8% increase. I just wanted to point out in this too that last year we had to, was it last year or 2 years ago? The older I get, the harder it is to remember backwards, like how long ago it was.
Amen.
But, we had to change the allocation to be 50% in lake and 50% watershed. And so we ended up creating two separate grant programs, if you will, one in-lake, one watershed. And we've decreased a little bit the projects fund for in-lake because we have sort of a backlog. And again, we're trying to build up the reserves again. So I don't know if anybody wants to add anything else to that. Maybe you can talk through this a little bit, Sam? if
Yeah,
you
we have
want.
just, the one other piece that's also under here is a replenishment of the lake fund of 300,000 that is coming out of fund balance as well, so that is in here. And then you are correct, we are programmed essentially at this point to return just under $70,200 to the 2% reserve as we close out essentially. This budget should, everything stay within budget next year.
Great, thank you, Sam. Any questions on 80/20?
I do, Madam Chair. On behalf of residents of Chautauqua County that recently have been asking me a simple question. Is there any change in handling Chautauqua Lake? Any practical change in handling Chautauqua Lake coming up in 2026? A number of folks they understand there have been studies going on, they understand a lot of money's been spent by various entities on studies. People want to know, is there anything practical that could change next year that would avoid the sum of the apparent disastrous mess that we had in at least the south basin of the lake this summer? Anything you could tell the public, next year we got an idea that we're going to implement that we haven't done before, regardless of the fact we don't have these studies completed yet or whatever. Is there anything that we can tell them that we've decided might make a little difference and we're going to try it next year?
2 words, better collaboration. We're investing more in planning through the Chautauqua Lake and Watershed Management Alliance, and through our foresight in investing ARPA funds in better equipment and larger equipment, we're able to handle the sort of unexpected lows that we've experienced this year. Cold weather and ice is a two-edged sword. Snowmobile, there's revenue, that sort of thing. It also affects the ecology of the lake. Common waterweed, Elodea, is a cold weather plant. It thrives under the ice. So when all the other weeds are asleep, it's growing. And when the ice melts and the sunlight comes down and we get a few storms to wash in some nutrients, it explodes, which is exactly what it did this year. So that was different, a little anomalous. Maybe we'll have another strong ice cover next year. Maybe we won't. I don't know what 2026 will bring us on a lake. But we are working better together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
That's something. Thank you.
Fred Johnson, any questions, any final questions?
The only one, and I think it's offline, is for next year and this year, but really it's this year, the annual competitive application cycle. Where did that go? Do you have a list of that?
For the 3% or 2%?
I am under, that's in the 3%. That's the only one where you have annual competitive application cycle. Yeah.
So we'd be happy to provide a list of the 2025 projects. 2026, the applications were just due this week, and we'll be scoring and ranking within the next month or so.
Yeah, I've been asked for that a couple of times.
Thank you, Fred. Legislator Larson, anything? Chairman? Well, we appreciate your time very much. As we don't have a quorum, we are just ending in discussion with audit and control to make our decisions.
Thank you, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your support, and we're going to keep trying hard every day like we have been, so.
Great. We appreciate everything you do.
Thank you to Kitty and Jen, but also to Sam in particular. Appreciate it, Sam.
Absolutely.
All I'm trying to do is give Mark the tools he needs to achieve some of the things I've been challenging the government to achieve. You need the money. Thanks, Martin.